Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name's of course Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about Final Fantasy XIV in 2020. Today we are taking a look at the second part of the Crystal Tower raid, the Syrcus Tower. This is the second part of this raid. I had a really good time doing the first part. It is my first Alliance raid that I've really been doing, so I was very excited to see what the second part would bring. For those of you who are unaware of the day, it is actually a Sunday upload. We did have a video yesterday as well, so it's become quite the Final Fantasy weekend, which is awesome. I've had a little bit more time to play recently, and I've had a few sort of videos ready to go, so I figured why not do a double upload weekend and just have a little bit of fun with it, which is awesome. But yeah, I'm really excited to share this. I changed things up a little bit with this one. The last video I did on Thornmarch, I had a fairly confusing time trying to figure out what was going on in the fight, and a lot of you have mentioned, hey, you should be looking up the mechanics before you dive in, which is fair and is how I would treat endgame content, so why would I not treat, kind of mid-game raids like that as well? So I did actually look up some of the mechanics for this fight before diving in. I am now realizing that once I say that and I don't do the mechanics properly, I'm going to look even worse than before, but that's something we'll face as time goes on. Now, I did look up the mechanics for a lot of this, and as it turns out, in the fights, we actually kind of blow through them pretty easily. I'd say this section of the raid was easier than the first section of the raid, though that could be because of the groups we have. The one thing that I was ready for was that we are split into the 3 alliances again, and I'm much more focused on healing my alliance, Alliance A, whereas last time I was kind of trying to split all of my attention between all the different players, and it got pretty confusing. So I think I did pretty well. One of my favorite things throughout this whole raid is that I'm just wearing a bunny costume, particularly in the cutscenes to enter and exit the raid. I'm standing among like the other 24 players who look like they're actually like badass and ready to fight, and I'm just here in my bunny costume with my book, and I'm like, hey, what's up? So that's been a pretty enjoyable time with this costume, and I still have the monocle as well too, so I do not look like a serious threat probably to a lot of the creatures we're encountering, but that's okay. MMOs are rarely about being serious, right? But yeah, so we get to the first boss here. I really enjoyed the aesthetic of this raid too. The first raid had a lot more sort of fire and lava, and this one rung more true to the sort of feeling of a Crystal Tower, and had some pretty cool bosses. So for this fight, I was kind of ready for a few different things. I believe there is a mechanic where you do have to stack at sort of different points and able to try and charge something, and that's what these kind of lightning orbs do. And I didn't see anyone was doing it, so I was kind of scared that, hey, maybe we're gonna wipe because of this. But then I looked at the boss's health and I realized that, we're cutting through this pretty quick. So I kind of thought that wasn't going to be a huge issue for us, but I was aware of the mechanic and ready to sprint somewhere once I saw everyone sprinting, or just ready for everyone to drop dead from something inexplicable. I do end up getting one of the ice orbs on me, and I remember that I'm supposed to kind of stay near the group so that someone with a fire orb can drag it over me and melt me into my little puddle. I don't know if I was necessarily close enough, but I think I did pretty good. It's probably pretty bad to get a healer with one of these two. Certainly, if there was a lot more damage going out, I definitely think we could have been in a bit of an issue. But I do get melted pretty quickly, and things are going pretty well. We had a few people get pretty low when I was frozen for a while, so I do kind of top everyone up, and we carry on. It definitely feels like everyone else is kind of focused on their alliances as well, which is good in the sense that I know who I'm responsible for, but it's also bad because, unless you're kind of going the extra mile to take a look at the other alliances, one of the alliance might really start struggling if the healer is taken out or something like that. So it's kind of one of the issues, but it goes pretty well. And I have learned about the gear and how each sort of alliance gets their own piece, which makes it a lot more sensible in terms of one piece per like 8 people, whereas before I kind of thought it was one piece for 24 people. And I do get a piece here that kind of looks like an upgrade, but I must confess I don't know a ton about the actual stats that I'm supposed to be hunting for healing. This one itself is called a healing belt, which is good. So I take that. Whenever it does say like healing, I'm like, okay, that's probably for healers. But when it's just looking at the actual stats themselves, I sometimes get confused because there are a few unique stats that I haven't seen in other games where you might see, strength, dex, intelligence, stamina. You have some very specific like spell speed and direct hit and all these different things in mind and stuff like that. I feel like at a certain point, specifically once I get to a point where I do start caring more about gear and gearing up, I'll start looking at what stats I should be focusing on, what stats mean for other classes and stuff like that, but we're not quite there yet. So we continue forward. It's kind of a mix of trash and bosses early on here, where each of the trash packs typically have a pretty cool dragon with them as well, which I think is really nice. The trash isn't anything crazy. The dragon kind of does like a few AoE burst attacks, and that's about it. But it's a pretty like, I don't know, a pretty simple raid where we're just kind of clearing each room and then going up a staircase to the next room. Nothing too crazy. Where the first raid, the first part of the Crystal Tower had more sort of a branching system where there were different hallways you had to wander through, and there was more options to get lost, I think. So this second boss I was actually pretty excited to try because you do have these sort of jump pads, which it made the combat look really fast and interesting. And not to say there's something wrong necessarily with Final Fantasy's combat, but it is a bit more static, right? A bit more like lengthy casts and stuff like that. And I was kind of excited to see how having jump pads and more mobility in the actual mechanics of the fight would play along. As it turns out, we don't even do kind of the outer rim where you do kind of go from platform to platform killing things. We actually just take this guy out super, super quickly. And I'm doing my best to continue with my DPS because it just doesn't seem like there's much damage coming out from the boss, which speaks to our group doing a pretty good job in general. I've also, and this was kind of a tip that I had in some of the other videos, I've tried to make it made a goal of focusing the boss so I can see that my dots on it and kind of keep up with the health so that I know, hey, he's gonna die soon. We don't have to worry about this. He does end up spawning the clockwork rights at the end, but we don't even need to jump into them. I was so prepared with all the mechanics this time. I was like, oh, someone needs to jump in here so we can actually start DPSing it, but then we just killed the boss. So it's kind of one of the situations where I did all the research, and because of that, I won't use any of it. But if I didn't look it up before, I'm sure we'd be wiping on like every mechanic, and like it would be a huge thing. It's one of those things where you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, I think, and that's just how life is sometimes. But that's okay. We're casual, it's been a real fun time kind of grinding my way through some of the main scenario quests and mixing in some of these other pieces of content as well. I think it's been once I hit level 50, I found I had a larger pool of interesting content that I was actually really excited to try, whereas before it was, mostly leveling and then quests was kind of what I had to do for excitement. And yes, quests are exciting sometimes, but that can get kind of boring. Like both leveling and questing can get a bit tedious if that's what you're focused on. This dragon here actually did more damage than the boss before it by a lot. I think we face tanked like a full fire breath, which really hurt us and a few other groups. But I was kind of dozing from the last boss not being much of a challenge, and then this guy came in and was just like, whoa, that's a piece of trash that really hit pretty hard. But yeah, we take him out. I notice here that Alliance C is having a bit of issues, and I kind of make note that maybe I'll watch Alliance C and some of the future fights as well, because I've now realized that I might be a bit too focused on just watching my Alliance and not helping out as much with some of the others. But you know, what are you going to do? This boss in particular, Ammon, I don't know, looks really, really cool. I love kind of like the sort of three-dimensionalness of the cape. Like it just looks very impressive. And we do get to experience a little bit more of the mechanics of this fight, as we don't knock it down quite as quickly. More than anything, it actually spawns adds that we have to focus before the boss, and because of that, we're not able to just nuke down the boss as quick as possible. So we'll see here that there's kind of these globs that come out, and you just have to really quickly burst them down, and it's not a terribly difficult thing. I'm sure this used to be a big rush probably when it first came out, but you just kill them really quick. And then there's these other ads, the cum-cums, that are kind of big and spooky. And the trick here is you have these orbs that you have to kind of guide through them, and it'll shrink them down for a bit to make them weak. And you can see one just shrunk there, but I actually end up getting one of the orbs in the next batch of them. And I'm super excited because I knew exactly what I was supposed to do at this point. I was like, okay, I got the orb, where do I bring it to? I think like overall, all of the mechanics I learned about for this were not overly complex, but they were kind of mechanics that could happen to anyone in the group, maybe minus the tank. And, you know, you always have to keep your wits about yourself, which I think will be really exciting when we're at more relevant content that takes, longer than a couple minutes to kill. Finally, there's these snakes, and I believe someone's supposed to turn into a toad and run away from them. Oh yeah, there's the toad there. There he is. He's kind of an orange guy. However, he's kind of going towards the snake, which that's not what I was instructed to do in the video I watched. But, wow, I did not notice this actually when I was fighting, that there was this guy just jumping around. Oh, and this is kind of a raid wipe mechanic, the Curtaincall, where you have to stand behind the ice blocks. And you can see here, I was like one of the first people behind this, and there's people who don't even make it. So I was particularly proud of myself that I was the one rezzing people and not the one who was getting rezzed this time. But yeah, you know, just kind of like humble bragging about this entire fight. It, you know, it went pretty well. I topped everyone up afterwards. Bit of damage. I think this is maybe my favorite fight of this this section, because it was, I think, just made longer because of the fact that we had to deal with the ads as well, whereas some of the other bosses we were able to just destroy so quickly. We also got a bunch of interesting like pots and stuff as loot for this, and I have a feeling that they might be meaningful. They might not like allow you to get pieces of gear. I wasn't really sure what to do with them, and because of that, I just kind of like didn't feel like I deserved to loot them. Whereas someone might be like running this specifically to try and get one of those, and I'm just stealing it. So maybe I'll look into what those do. Maybe they're completely worthless at this point as well, but I'd assume it's maybe something cosmetic. So this is our final baddie. He's kind of like just chilling on his throne, like thinking about life. And we come in and he's like, oh, hey, it's me. He's a really cool magician looking guy though. And what I particularly like about this is A, the staff looks awesome. B, he's magical enough that he doesn't even need to hold the staff. He can kind of just have it float by his hand, which I think is really awesome. However, watching this, I almost got cut out of the arena, but that's okay. So we dive right in to the fight once it loads in, and we're just giving it to this guy as usual. I go and focus target, and notice he's already like 75% down in health, which is like absolutely crazy. We do get to experience some mechanics here as well, and there are definitely a lot more kind of raid wipe mechanics for this, which makes it feel a bit more like an actual boss, our final boss rather. So there was some things that I was definitely on the lookout for. A lot of dodging telegraphs to begin with, while he, you know, just gets damaged by us without much issue, and then he does disappear, and I was kind of ready for this, but I was also like, wait, where'd he go? And then I was like, oh yeah, so we have to destroy all of these sort of things on the ground before these meteors that are going to be coming at us from above hit us. So you can see here there's, you know, death coming from above pretty viciously, so it's kind of a DPS race. It's definitely not much of an issue given everyone's current gear, but I could definitely see it being quite a stressful time, back in the day. So we kill him real quick, and then these orbs with circles spawn. And if I had not watched the video, I would have surely ran away from these, but I did know that it absorbs damage amongst everyone in it, so I kind of had to help the person. And then afterwards, the orbs create a floating area that protects you from whatever happens underneath. What I wasn't prepared for is that there was also a telegraph afterwards, and I had to quickly run out of, but I did manage to pull that one off at the end. So there's quite a few mechanics going on, and I do actually resurrect someone as well in my party, whereas, before I might not have been paying attention to it as much, but I did get someone else up, which is good as well. I feel like on the whole, I was a better party member for this raid than I was in the last one, which is improvement, and that's all we can ask for. Moving forward, if I just continue to make a little improvements this way, things are going to be nice. So we do cycle through another one of the phases where we have to break everything before the meteors come down. On some dark side, I'm kind of hoping to see what it looks like when the meteors come down, but we didn't wipe, don't worry. He comes back out. I'm ready for the dark orbs to spawn, kind of a rinse repeat situation. I think everyone else is also a little bit more aware of what to do now. There's definitely some people not standing in them still, but we had more people in them. We had a few people die again, unfortunately. And to give them credit, if you hadn't watched the video, those dark circles definitely don't look like something you want to be in. So it actually got pretty messy right at the end, but I saw that we were close enough that, hey, let's just burst everyone up as best we can and try and get this done, which goes pretty well on the whole. But yeah, guys, there's the raid. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I do have some more content that is almost ready as well, and I'm excited to share that with you in the coming days. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.